Why don't we go ahead and just start chatting and we can get into the content as people flow in.
Yeah, sounds good. Um, so I thought we'd start off just greeting, I'm Oracle, been in Morpheus since probably month two, so quite early on before, the things came out, if you haven't heard of me. And today we have with us as well David Johnston, the, main honcho when it comes to anything Morpheus, and definitely, one of the key contributors in the space within Morpheus. So, if I haven't heard of him, I'll give him some time to introduce himself. So,
Cool.
hey, yeah,
Thanks, team. Hey, everybody. David Johnston here, one of the open source contributors to Morpheus. Been in crypto since 2012, in AI before that, back when we called it machine learning and natural language processing. So it's really cool to see the two fields of AI and crypto finally coming together. Been working on the whole idea of smart agents since 2023. The idea of combining crypto wallets and smart contracts with AI agents. Which, when the Morpheus proposal came along, when the Anons dropped it September of last year, seems like sort of the natural progression to build a network to support distributed compute and everything people needed to deploy smart agents. So yeah, it's been an amazing 8 months. It's hard to believe it's been that long already. But huge community response to the fair launch that started on February 8th. I think there's north of $400 million of staked ETH that's been provided by the community. And what's happening is that yield is competing every day to earn Morpheus tokens for capital contributors. So kind of a cool structure. It's one of the things I really liked about the paper was this idea of letting people contribute just their yield, withdraw their principal, their staked ETH whenever they wanted. After 7 days, they could just pull it out whenever. And so that sort of created this low risk approach where you could support a cool open source project with your Ethereum. So I'm going to hold Ethereum anyway, as might as well point the yield at a cool project that I want to support. So anyway, yeah, that's been some of the history, and yeah, it's been awesome to see 160 code contributors already have provided open source contributions, and then I think we're north of 5,000 people have contributed to the capital. So really cool community coming together, and yeah, it's been awesome. But Oracle, what should we jump into first?
I had the muted myself there for a sec. So I think um, one of the key things a lot of people want to know is sort of like, where are we at with you know the progress? Like, we've got the capital contract has been released uh, a few months ago now, and the launch is coming up soon, in terms of the token being liquid. And we've had incredible support in the capital side of things with 400 million last I checked in USD, stETH, staked into the contracts, and diverting their yield into the Morpheus liquidity pools. So that is amazing. And yeah, so we're sort of settled around there at the moment, but we see more ETH coming in every day. And being so close to launch, it'd be good to know where we're at with the compute contract, how things have progressed in terms of the TCM. So maybe starting on the compute contracts and going from there.
Sure. So yeah, just starting with the bootstrapping period, like you say, we've got 90 days where everybody's earning more tokens for contributing capital or contributing code. So that's going to create the first Morpheus in existence, right? Those more tokens, I think they'll be north of 600,000 come May 8th when the tokens become claimable. So there should be pretty good price discovery. You won't have the Zcash problem where there aren't enough tokens in existence to sort of do price discovery. So hopefully it'll be a smooth process when the Uniswap pool goes live on Arbitrum on May 8th. That's day 90, right? And so yeah, we're 67 days in. I think we got 33 days left until the tokens become claimable. So yeah, I mean, it's a pretty cool mechanism, right? Because over those 90 days, the yield is building up in the smart contract, and so that creates the initial liquidity in the Uniswap pool for both the More and the staked ETH gets converted into wrapped ETH, which is just ETH on Arbitrum as the trading pair. That'll go live on Uniswap. So it'll create millions of dollars of initial liquidity in the pool, which is really cool. It starts, with a good bit of volume, and then of course anybody else can contribute ETH or MOR tokens that they've earned to the Uniswap pool as well. And everybody that does, that'll just continue increasing the liquidity. That's the other thing I like is even after May 8th, just to be clear, like the capital competition continues. People can keep providing staked ETH for the entire 16 years of the supply curve, right? So, the competition doesn't stop May 8th. People can keep providing staked ETH and earning more. And what will be interesting is there'll sort of be a equilibrium or a balance that'll likely develop, right, between the implied price for the yield people are contributing versus the market price of the Uniswap pool, right? So logically, if it's cheaper to contribute yield, I'll contribute yield. If it's cheaper on the pool and I want more, I'll buy it from the pool, right? So it'll be interesting to see how that balances out. But like this isn't a one-time thing. This isn't a 90-day, launch and then it's over. After May 8th, people will still be able to provide capital and yield to the project for the next year, for the next 10 years, for the next 16 years. So, 24% of all the emissions go to capital providers. So that's one of the most common questions I see in Discord and the other forums. And so I figured just to address that right up front. So yeah, second to your point about compute, Ryan from Lumerin just dropped yesterday or the day before a really interesting detailed architecture for the distributed router, right? So this is how people will be able to run AI models, let's say Llama 2 or Noose Hermes or Mistral, whatever people want to run, and they'll get rewarded in more tokens for providing that compute. And people that are running smart agents or want to run AI models can use those models. So the decentralized router is how you calculate those rewards. Who does the protocol pay when inference is provided to a user, right? And the answer should be it should be an open and fair market, right? Anybody's able to offer the compute and anybody's able to use it. So this is like one of the big benefits of holding the Morpheus token is you'll have a pro rata access to your portion of the network. So if you're holding, 1% of the More tokens, for example, right, you'd have access to 1% of the compute available that day, which is a huge, based on just how many people have stated that they're planning to offer compute on Morpheus, this is probably going to be a lot of computation available to people holding the More token, right? And it's an open competition to see who gets to provide those models. So I think that's a really cool model, right? Makes it very competitive, right? And we can all of a sudden point all of this compute in crypto towards a real use case, right? Not just hashing SHA-256, right, for the purpose of proof of work, but actually, consuming all of this intelligence and this compute from model providers is a really cool use case, and that gets rewarded by crypto. My friend ran the numbers, and she pointed out that before Ethereum switched to proof of stake, if you look at how many GPUs were mining on Ethereum, it's 50 times as many that were used to train ChatGPT-4, right? So there's a huge amount of compute available in the crypto world, eager to earn rewards, right? So now we can point that at decentralized AI as a use case is really cool. So yeah, that's the capital side of things. That's the compute side of things. There's also been the release of Morpheus version 006, which is integrated with MetaMask and smart contracts. So people can start to see what it looks like to use an AI to send crypto, to check their balance, to do all those kind of things without having to navigate through wallets or understand smart contracts. So it's gonna be cool to see those different pieces come together. But yeah, ton of stuff going on ahead of the tokens becoming claimable on May 8th. But yeah, it's been really awesome to see sort of how many cool proposals people have put forth on how to improve Morpheus the last few months.
Um, yeah, no, it's definitely been great, and it's good to hear that Ryan has put out something recently about how the compute contract's going to work, and the whole reason I think crypto appeals to the masses is that there is a way for you to be incentivized for providing something.
Right.
Even especially in the open source community, where a lot of the time it's at the cost of um, the user, and while they do have the skills to provide the way that things work, it's just that they can't provide those skills without any form of compensation. So or without the ability to do so. So it's like very very good to have these people being able to get rewards through Morpheus and this mechanism.
Yeah.
So another question.
I've often think of crypto as sort of this first time, like you're saying, that we've been able to reward open source contributors and like monetize open source, right? Like you're saying, anybody with a GPU can compete on the compute side, but also anybody writing code all of a sudden can compete to offer contributions to a project.
Yeah, and to go on from that, so there has been a lot on the like local node, the capital, the compute provision, and everything. But there's also something else that is very big and new when it comes to Morpheus, and that is the TCM, or the Techno Capital Machine. And this is a very interesting, mechanism that helps open source contributors or open source projects be able to launch and then get rewarded through a delegation of yield via the TCM, just like how Morpheus bootstrapped its liquidity pools. So if you would be so kind as to sort of let the audience know what the TCM is and how it is a new and exciting way for open source development to be rewarded for their for launching open source projects, and for users that have assets to be able to support these kinds of projects.
Sure. Yeah. So, I mean, I gave a whole talk on this at ETH Denver. I guess that was a month or two ago in February at the Decentralized AI Summit. And, the whole idea is like, hey, this has worked really well for the Morpheus project. Let's extend it and generalize the model so that anybody can use it, right? And propose calling this More 20, right, for the Morpheus 20th MRC, right? And that's sort of useful lingo in the smart contract world because everybody uses ERC20, right, for issuing fungible tokens in Ethereum. Here in Morpheus, use the More 20 standard in order to issue your own fair launch smart contracts for your open source project. So I think that's a really cool idea to sort of extend this capability to everyone else. And like you said, there's obviously a huge amount of latent demand for people that hold Ethereum that want to support other open source projects, right? So, Morpheus is all open source, right? It's totally permissionless. So here are the smart contracts, right? Here are the More 20 dashboards. Here are all the audits, right? Feel free to use this standard. And so talking to some of the open source smart contract developers, I think by May, in just 3 or 4 weeks, anybody's going to be able to use those contracts in a super easy way where they can show up. They don't need a company, they don't need a foundation, they don't need any central party, right? They don't have to do a token sale. They can just do this fair launch approach, right? And the important thing to understand is it's not a one-time event, right? that was one of the big downsides of the ICO model is people would raise some capital and then they'd spend it to zero. And unless the project took off before they ran out of money, that was it. Right. Whereas with the more 20 contracts, right, you can have a 16-year emission schedule, right? People can provide, yield on an ongoing basis every month, every block, right? And keep supporting the project. And, it's all, open for anybody to participate, right? And it sort of leaves a huge window for people to gain tokens in a new project, even if they show up 6 months later or a year later. If they want to support it, all they have to do is point the yield from their staked ETH towards that project, right? And obviously, there are tens of billions of dollars of staked ETH, and a lot of people interested in getting something for it, right? If I'm going to hold my Ethereum anyway, I might as well stake it, right? And if I'm staking it, I might as well point the yield at a project that I want to support. I've got the same number of Ethereum tokens I started with, but now I'm getting some additional reward, right? So, been thinking about this concept as automated recurring revenue or automated recurring rewards, right? ARR, right? This new idea of taking these yield bearing assets like Ethereum and using that as a sustainable way to support new projects and get rid of all the intermediaries, right? Get rid of the companies. You don't need a custodian to hold the money. You don't have to trust anybody. You could put it in a more 20 contract, know that you're earning tokens and that you can withdraw your ETH when you want, right? And you're just contributing the yield. I think that's like a new fundamental crypto primitive that the Morpheus community has really pioneered and can now sort of offer that to everybody. So definitely going to be doing more writing and talking and thinking about more 20. And there's a ton of projects that have asked about using the contracts. And that's the beauty of open source, right? Everybody can use them and become part of the Morpheus community, and end up, supporting more development of these contracts and dashboards and audits to make sure they're super safe. So I think there's a lot of network effect to build just around this capital piece, even as the compute side is getting built out, even as the smart agent side is getting built out. The first piece is capital, right? That's how we bootstrap all these networks. What do you want to dive
Sorry,
into next one?
technical error on my end. Yeah, I reckon the TCM is like a really amazing, way for people and projects to raise. I think it's just like, innovation on innovation when it comes to Morpheus, with regards to, going from smart agents and computation to, this TCM thing. It could have been a project on its own, and done equally as good. It would have been one of the top projects, I think, in the in this cycle and beyond, just on its own. So it's being coupled with Morpheus itself is such like an amazing thing. So I think that the people at Morpheus, the contributors, are really like pulling out all the stops, with regards to what they have to offer. If people have gone into what things that have been spoken about in the MRCs, it's there's like really amazing concepts from like getting more people to come in from other, more like yield being accessible from other ecosystems to different ways of like fair price launching. So I think it's worth people having a look into those MRCs, as they probably won't get as much exposure, just from the Discord and from the Twitter, Twitter like tweets, X tweets, I should say now, than the
Yep.
you'd get from actually looking into the GitHub.
Sure.
So
Yeah, no, the MRCs, and just for everybody, the acronym is Morpheus Requests for Comments. This is inspired very much by Ethereum requests for comments, in that whole structure of anybody in the community can propose a way to improve one of the reference implementations. And just to highlight one that I think is really interesting is MRC. I think it's 22, which is more staking, right? So that's a whole nother level on all of this, right? Is, this goes into how, the emissions from the protocol, that goes to support end application builders, right? That community builder bucket, and having anybody holding more tokens be able to direct those rewards from the protocol in proportion to how much they hold towards their favorite website, their favorite application, their favorite smart agent, whatever they want to support, right? You're effectively extending that whole More 20 architecture beyond just staked ETH, but to Morpheus itself, right? Because think about it, like, this is almost like Morpheus has a staking reward, just like Ethereum has a staking reward, right? And you can then direct that towards projects building on Morpheus who all need inference and access to these models, right? So it makes sense anybody launching a smart agent on Morpheus would want to collect and get more from the community in order to build their protocol on Morpheus, right? And use the inference, use the models. So this is a really cool, even another layer to it is, when I hold more tokens, not only do I get access to compute, I can direct some of the protocol emissions and that yield coming from Morpheus towards projects that I want to support, right? And this again echoes what I remember from the early days of Ethereum is what did everybody wanted to do, after Ethereum took off is they used their Ethereum to support new projects building on Ethereum, right? So that's clearly, what a lot of people want to do is like, okay, cool. I'm all in on decentralized AI. I'm supporting this Morpheus ecosystem. How do I support more projects to launch on Morpheus? And the cool thing is because we have all these tools now with staking and yield, you can skip the ICO wave, you can skip the foundations, you can skip the companies and use the protocol directly to support these new projects. So it's going to be really interesting to see, as those MRCs, and this is more staking MRC 22, get implemented. Okay, great. Now I've got even more reasons to hold Morpheus because now I get to help direct capital and staking rewards in the ecosystem, right? So yeah, there's sort of something for capital providers. There's something for developers who want to use compute. It doesn't matter what side of the equation you're on. So I really like that aspect. Is sort of Morpheus is not just capital or compute, but it supports developers and people building on the ecosystem too.
Yeah, the four C's.
Yep.
Yeah, code capital, community compute. Very important factors of Morpheus, and I think ongoing to other projects that launched TCM.
Yep.
Yeah, I have someone on to come on as a speaker. I assume that they have a question they want to ask. But before that, I just want to quickly ask another question given by another key contributor that I can't actually get onto as a speaker. But the question that they want to ask is, so with regards to the TCM, how can teams get involved with it? Like, how can who can use it? What chains will be on? How can people get involved in launching something, or at least expressing interest that they want to launch something with the TCM?
So, the TCM is the techno capital machine, right? And so in the short term, I think it's useful to talk about More 20 because that's the C, right? So that's the capital in the techno capital machine, right? And so the More 20 contracts, if you look on the Morpheus AI's GitHub, right, you'll see the new repo for MOR 20. So if people follow that, they'll see as the smart contracts get updated in the next few weeks and make it easy for anybody to use this generically. So it's going to start just with staked Ethereum, Lido staked Ethereum, and just like Morpheus did, given how deep and how much available staked Ether is in that ecosystem. But yeah, there's a ton of cool proposals to extend this to Solana, extend this to other EVMs on Ethereum, whether it's Base, or Optimism's primary second layer, or Polygon, right? There's so many good layer twos now, right? And the smart contract developers just finished an integration of layer zero, which is one of the interoperability standards for if you want to go across different layer twos in Ethereum. So those updates to the smart contract for Morpheus are going through an audit right now. I think that'll be finished hopefully by mid-April, in the next couple of weeks. And then, after Morpheus goes live, it'll be really easy to extend the smart contracts to Polygon and Base and Optimism and these different ecosystems on top of Ethereum. And then it looks like Solana will get added. The rumor is May or June for layer zero. And so after the interoperability standards add Solana, then you'd be able to add moving Morpheus tokens or collecting yield from that ecosystem as well. Because fundamentally, if you read the white paper, Morpheus is chain agnostic, right? It made sense because there's a ton of liquidity to start on Ethereum, but we want everybody to have smart agents, whether they're using Cosmos or Solana or Ethereum or you name it, right? And so, yeah, it's really cool to see all the proposals. And basically, the community is just working through what are the technical barriers, what are the technical dependencies that have to be put in place in order to extend Morpheus to these other ecosystems. So I think everybody in the community has been super supportive of extending Morpheus. So it's really just a question of putting these technical dependencies in place so that it can be done. But yeah, it seems to be moving pretty quickly.
Yeah, I was going to say that it does seem like things that sometimes take quite a long time to be implemented within Morpheus. It's happening at a much faster rate because there's a lot of interest here. Yeah, it's really really amazing. So Taco will be bringing out a question, I believe.
Great.
Yeah. GM. David, good to see you again. It's been a minute since Denver.
Cool, man.
One of the questions that had been passed on to me that I couldn't find within the GitHub, and my assumption is it's being bought directly through Uniswap on the pool, but part of the staking yield is going to be buying more 20 token. Will it be buying it OTC, or will it and then burning it, or will it be buying it off the DEX?
That's a great question. And there is a good write-up, I think it's in the MRC section, where you can see the whole details for the plans for how the launch of the AMM is going to happen. And it's a pretty detailed document. I'll pull it up right now. Let's see. AMM, yeah, the plan here on the MRC section for Uniswap. There's a lot of details about how that's gonna launch, and so I'll pull that up. But effectively, it's going to match part of the more tokens that come from the protection fund. So remember, 4% of the more every day are being emitted to a protection fund, right? So you don't want to give any person like a preference to buy or sell these tokens, and there's no pre-mine, so nobody's got any tokens until they all become claimable. And so to solve the bootstrapping problem, the emissions for the protection fund are set to unlock slightly early. It's like a day or two early compared to all the others, so the protection fund can do that function of selling those 50,000 more. I think it's 54,000 more that it's accrued the first 90 days, and sell that to the yield that's been accrued, right? The protocol owned liquidity. And so there's no burn function that just goes into the protocol owned liquidity. So 54% of the yield that's been accrued goes into setting that up, that initial pair, right? It gets traded for the more that's built up in the protection fund. So then in Uniswap, you have half more and half ETH, right? Or wrapped ETH on Arbitrum in the pair, right? And then the remaining 48%, and you can see this in the detailed document, just go to basically provide buying and liquidity at lower price levels until after 30 days, all of the yield that's built up from the 90-day bootstrapping period has been deployed in the pool. And, of course, anybody can be depositing or buying or selling more during that period. So yeah, there's a whole plan around the mechanism for setting up, the whole bootstrap of the Uniswap pool. So I'll pull that up and post it here in the group. But yeah, that's been really thought through because you want a good, smooth rollout where there's enough liquidity both on the More side and on the Ethereum side to get it kicked off.
Yeah, no, you guys done an amazing job in the details and on the document side of things. I just didn't see if it was going to be buying OTC or if it was going to be buying from the pool directly. I guess the second question to that, is it going to be done permissionlessly? Is it going to be set up into the contract to be done, or someone's going to be clicking that button?
So right now, the protection fund is managed by the multisig. So it's not over the counter because again, there's no pre-mine or other tokens available. So the only pool to buy from is those protection fund more, and so those will go into the initial trade. So just manually, Ethereum will move from the yield into the protection fund, and the protection fund will move its more into the Uniswap pool, right? And so then you'll have them both available there as liquidity providers in the Uniswap pool, right? So I think that's a really good approach. And I found the MRC. You're looking for MRC09 is the AMM launch process, and so there's a really good write up there about each part of that process, how it gets matched, how it does the bootstrapping period, and then how it balances afterwards. But definitely worth a read. I'll see if I can add it here to the messages. But yeah, no, that's the one you want to look at is MRC 009.
009. Awesome. Thank you, David. And then on behalf of Manifest and Lifted Initiative, this is going to be a fun journey to be part of and be part of all of this. So, we have your back. If there's anything we can do, let me know.
Awesome, man. No, I appreciate it. There's so many people who have put in so much thought to every part of this process. It's been really cool to see, like, as each step comes along, people are like, oh, have you thought about this? Have you thought about that? Even the idea came entirely from the community of having protocol owned liquidity, right? Because initially in the first version of the white paper, it was just going to be a simple burn function. And that's cool. Okay, the yield goes to buy some more every day and burn it, but you don't get that same liquidity over time as if you just permanently put it into the protocol and liquidity. So that was one of the really, I think, important updates the community made to how the whole Morpheus architecture works. And I think that's been a huge positive.
Awesome. And then last but not least, where am I gonna see you at next in the world?
That fucking bald head motherfucker. Huh.
I think somebody's gone off mute. So yeah, Taco, I think we'll be in, probably consensus is coming up pretty soon. So, if anybody's going to be at consensus, there can be a lot of decentralized ecosystem stuff going on there pretty soon.
Awesome. I will see you at consensus, and then we got something going on at Paris Blockchain Week, and then Dubai as well for Token around Token 2049. So this will be fun.
Awesome, man. Look forward to it.
Thanks, Oracle.
Sounds good.
No, thank you.
All right, cool.
Sorry, guys. I'm just having a bit of technical issue. Yeah, I was having technical issues adding speakers. So I gave everyone a bit of a free pass to get on, but it seems that some people are
a little too eager.
Yeah. Is there anyone else that would like to ask any questions? I do have some more that had been fielded beforehand, but I'm always open to getting people on board and asking things. Well, that said, there is a bit of a concept that I had been working on that is going to be integrated into MRCs, which involves in some capacity the weights of Morpheus. I believe that there's a lot of there's not enough understanding about the extent of like and the power of the weights within the ecosystem when it comes to coders. I think that in a way that it adds to a new or like a previous, I should say, mechanism that was happening, but which is in the form of nodes. But now with the now with weights coming out as well, and I think a few different other things like NFTs, sort of brings together this new asset class of what I call token generating assets, or also super speculative assets that go based on their long-term emissions rewards in a form of you're getting tokens over a very long period of time that cannot be condensed into one cycle, that with a sophisticated set of tokenomics that does not entirely reflect the value of the token just through one cycle and the utility of it. So I think, what are your thoughts on, I guess, the weights and how they're used and how they can be, given, adjusted, how there's similarities in a way to nodes that are used to validate, security and different things. But in this case, I think that the weights themselves are their own asset class. But with the tokenomics is what really gives it its strength, and it's makes it differentiates itself from the rest of like the things like nodes and NFTs that generate tokens, etc.
That's a good question. Yeah, there's definitely a need for more understanding about how the whole code rewards work in Morpheus, right? So effectively, this is a proxy for contributions that have been made to the code base, right? And when we talk about the code base, there are 10 different parts of the Morpheus reference implementation. And if anybody hasn't checked that out on GitHub, definitely recommend it. But if you look at MRC00, you can see a list right there. Smart contracts, there's a reference implementation for those. Smart agents, the Morpheus local version, more 20 contracts, the protection fund. Those are the 5 that's already been coded up. And there's another 5 reference implementations effectively being built now. Code proofs, extending those, capital proofs, extending those, compute proofs, which is what Lumerin is donating, front end proofs, for these user applications, and then finally interoperability, right? So you really have 10 pieces to the Morpheus ecosystem, and you need all 10 of these, right? You have to have the smart contracts issuing the tokens, you have to have the tools for the smart agents, you have to have the capital, the compute, the code, and the community aspects. And so these are all important parts. And so people think of sort of Morpheus as one thing, but it's really these 10 pieces of software all working together. So you can think of those as the reference implementation, right? And anybody can fork the code and make their own version, but it's helpful to have a first version that serves as a reference and gives examples of how you can build, and integrate with the Morpheus smart agents or smart contracts or use the compute or anything else, right? And so there's a bunch of people that have volunteered to be the repository maintainers for these different reference implementations. So when somebody comes up with an idea, what they're saying is, hey, I have an improvement for the reference implementation, right? We should add this new type of yield. We should add this new type of chain. We should, extend these contracts in a certain way. They write that up in a Morpheus request for comment. The maintainer of that repo reviews the idea, checks if there's any technical barriers or dependencies that need to be developed, and then updates it. And the person might be offering to help with that code or build out one of the technical dependencies. And that's how Morpheus improves over time. Just the way there have been thousands of Ethereum requests for comments, right? That's how we got ERC20 for fungible tokens or ERC721 for non-fungible tokens, right? So this code base, it's cool that there doesn't need to be a foundation. This gives you a decentralized way for people to suggest improvements, and if their improvement is selected and they're selected to write that code, they can get rewarded with these weights, right? So 24% of the more emissions go towards the coding rewards. And so the weights provide the list of who gets those rewards, right? And the weight system is moving to 100 million weights, right? And every block, every day, as those rewards go out, the smart contract reads the addresses and say, okay, here's the 160 people who have weights in the code, and they're going to get rewarded in proportion to the code they wrote, to the contributions they made to the system. It doesn't have to be code, right? It can be documentation, it can be diagrams and examples, and all the things around making these 10 pieces of software function, can all be rewarded as part of the coder's reward. So, it's been really cool to see hundreds of people, want to get involved and contribute, and then keep improving that code. So there's sort of a recurring way to reward all those people. Now, the question becomes, okay, how do I track those rewards? Okay, well, I can use an Ethereum address, but it's less the Ethereum address of the person, it's more the Ethereum address of the code that they contributed, right? So you can think of their code as part of the tech stack. And as long as their code is in the tech stack and they're maintaining it, right? They haven't disappeared and the links haven't broken and dependencies aren't broken, like they're maintaining their code and it's still in use in the software, then they should keep getting rewarded, right? So as long as their weights are in the system. But let's say there's a redesign and part of the architecture changes and some of the code has been deprecated, right? Then that part of the code is no longer rewarded, right? And so these are really the term that's been proposed in MRC 21 is non-fungible agents, right? You're basically applying the non-fungible token standard to this code, right? And saying these are unique code contributions, right? This one might be a translation of a paper. This one might be the decentralized router. This code over here, contributes part of the smart contract, right? But they're all unique pieces that get different weights, that are getting rewarded in different ways. So it really makes sense not to think of weights as fungible tokens, but rather as non-fungible tokens, which is really interesting, right? So you then basically get all these building blocks. Okay, here's the code that I can use somewhere else, and I have now an address attached to that code, and I can reward that coder to maintain that code, and I can use it somewhere else, right? So you're creating, again, a marketplace for code, which is really cool. Usually, projects are managed by committees or DAOs or votes or all these kind of complex bureaucratic mechanisms. And instead, here it's just an open market, right? Anybody can write the code, anybody can contribute to code, and any maintainer can choose to use that code, right? And so hopefully, what you'll see is a bunch of people competing, and the best code at the best price will win, right, for that application. So that really makes it dynamic, and I think that's what you were referring to.
Yeah, definitely. Do you think in some, like I think this is expanding in its own way now. I think the concept of that you've described here with these weights and how they're a reflection of code, and this is like, I really do think that this is a new sort of category that's coming out. Do you think there will be weights in the future for, say, other projects, other protocols that are open source or otherwise, that will reflect in some way, this code that is being introduced into that protocol, and maybe even developing or having a marketplace of its own for these weights in the future, because they work on a different system, I guess, in as tokens themselves, because they're generating their own token. They're generating tokens from this protocol, and have a value of their own. In the case of Morpheus, there's an implied value to the weights, and that's why I term them super speculative assets, because having that weight gives you a percentage of that implied value, for a 16-year period of time when it comes to the emissions of Morpheus. So what are your thoughts on that progressing into the future?
Well, that's a really good point. Like, anybody that adopts the More 20 standard is going to have the same question. How do they reward coders? Okay, well, either you centralize it and pick a static team, or you open it up to this marketplace of code and you take the different pieces of code you need, right, and reward those people because you have a standard way to do that. They already have an address attached to that code. The code's already been proven, right? Let's say they grab one of the smart contracts. Great, that contract has been audited. It's already, secured hundreds of millions of dollars of tokens. It's really, sort of rock solid at that point, right? So hopefully we'll see all these pieces of code become cryptographic primitives that anybody building in the Morpheus ecosystem can grab and use for their own purpose, right? So if they're launching on top of Morpheus, not only do they get access to compute, not only can they raise capital, right, in a sustainable way with More 20, now they've got this huge library, this huge marketplace of code available to them, right? And it's well documented, and it's been well used, and it's already been through this big review process, right, with the Morpheus community. So you can have a higher level of confidence with what you're building. And I think that's really cool, right? Then you build a network effect. Okay, it's easier to build on Morpheus because I've already got all this code that's been well vetted, right? And I can take off the shelf all the pieces I need. I can add my own, special sauce and create something new, right? And I hope that's what we see with smart agents and dApps and smart contracts built on Morpheus. Is you really have that ability to build very quickly, right? Because things have been well vetted and you already know what you can do. And one project I would highlight is I really like and have followed for a long time the T protocol, TEA. This is by the same developer that famously built Homebrew, right? For those familiar with package management for like Apple applications and stuff like that, right? This is one of the most popular GitHub repos ever, right? But there was never really a way to reward people for all those packages and dependencies. And so T has done a really great job the last few years, and I believe it's in testnet right now, is the ability to create a rank and map all the dependencies of your software and then to reward people based on those dependencies, right? So I can think right now of like three different type of contributions in the Morpheus ecosystem, right? There was a recurring, role of code that has to be maintained. There might be one-time, contributions of something that needs to be done, and then that's rewarded in a certain way. But then there's these basic dependencies that everybody needs in their programs, and it's going to be really cool to see those rewarded, right, at scale by a lot of different developers, right? So you can pull the dependencies and libraries you need. You can pull, in recurring maintained pieces of code. You can reward people for contributing one time, unique bespoke pieces of code, right? So there's different models that I think people are going to experiment with. But yeah, that's, I think, where it gets interesting, because you can build a lot faster if you don't have to recreate the wheel every time you're writing a program, right? I mean, that's been the key to Ethereum. Most people aren't writing smart contracts from scratch, right? They're taking a template off of OpenZeppelin, and maybe they're changing a few variables, right? Or updating a little bit of it. But for most part, they want to use the template that's been, battle tested for years, right, and has already had, 10 audits and reviews, right? So the key is to build up these libraries of tools that everybody needs and make them accessible to people really easily. So yeah, check out MRC 21, the non-fungible agents. I think that's a really cool part of this, and we're sort of seeing all those pieces come together.
Okay, so can you hear me or?
Yep, loud and clear.
Yeah, I'm just having trouble with this whole the spaces. It's just not showing me things. It's kicking people randomly. It's been a bit weird. Hopefully next time it'll be a lot more clear and function properly. So we're sort of wrapping up a bit now. If there's any other questions anyone would like to ask, I would implore them to do so now. I see Raghu Kapoor is put themselves as a speaker. So if you have a question, please feel free to introduce yourself and ask.
Hey, hi guys. Yeah, this was a very informative AMA. I just wanted to ask on the LLM front, in LLM inferencing front. So we have compute coming up next month, right? But like let's just say that I want to train a model using this, and I want to use the distributed computing which the platform is providing. Is like how does that work? How does that how can I do that part?
That's a great question. Morpheus is sort of agnostic to what you want to use inference for, right? Because you can use inference to train a model, you can use inference, to run prompts against an existing model. So it's great to hear that you want to train models. And so, what you'll want to do is connect to a compute provider, right, that has a, certain size GPU or H100 or A100, whatever it is, right,
Yeah.
that you need. And if you're holding Morpheus tokens, you should have access, right, based on how much is available from the network, right? Right now, the more tokens for compute are building up in the compute smart contract, right? So for the first 90 days, I think 300,000 plus more are building up in the smart contract for compute. And so when compute goes live, let's say it's May or June, then great, that reserve of resources is ready to pay anybody offering compute. And the way it's coded is 1% of that total pool can be spent per day, right? So if 300,000 tokens have built up, and depending on the price of Morpheus, that'll tell you how much compute resources are available. But based on how much yield has been contributed, it seems like there'll be a lot of resources available for compute providers and people that want to access it. So yeah, that's the way it's structured, is to think about you're accessing a certain amount of inference per second. You're accessing it for an hour or a day. You'll open a session with the compute provider, right? And when you close that session, it records how much time and usage, and then the protocol pays the compute provider. So the user just has to hold their Morpheus. So they don't have
Oh, okay.
to pay directly. The protocol pays them, which is really an interesting mechanism. And it avoids lots of transactions
Yeah,
for
yeah.
the compute provider to be able to collect their reward, maybe every day, every week, whatever they want. At the end of those sessions, it records that proof.
Got it. Okay. Thank you.
But that's a great question. Speaking of which, I see Ryan Condron is on the line. He just dropped an incredible architecture for the Morpheus Lumerin decentralized router. So, he's certainly got a huge amount of depth and experience from building out a decentralized system for hash power, and now is extending that to all this AI model and inference use case. So, Ryan, I don't know if you want to say hi or offer any more insight. Hopefully, I characterize it in a technically accurate way.
No, you've done great. I've actually really enjoyed being on the other side of the AMA here. So, but I thought I'd jump up here in case you needed me to field anything.
Cool. Awesome. Sounds good. Yeah, everybody in Morpheus community is super excited, and it's how awesome is it that Lumen had already built so much of this code that was needed for a decentralized compute use case. So it's awesome to see the communities coming together.
Serendipitous. I mean, it's 2.5 years of development, and we're pumping here. Like, I think we started with the repo about maybe a month and a half ago, and we're already cranking on testnet right now, and getting very close to getting our provider registry up, and it's exciting to see how fast it's all come together.
Yeah, and you guys were even using what, Arbitrum, right, for the smart contract. So everything just lined up great.
Yeah. We were already all lined up against Arbitrum, so it was it was possibly the easiest transition to a new project code base that we've ever had.
Awesome, man. Well, appreciate you. Glad you're here. Other questions? Anybody else? I see we have another couple speakers who have jumped in.
Yeah, I want to hear about how phase two is going. Yeah, well, like where are you guys in the process of that?
Well, that's what Ryan was talking about for the decentralized compute. It sounds like that's coming along really well. If you look at the GitHub repo, the team has added a huge amount of code to the Morpheus Lumerin node repo is the one you want to look at. And Ryan just produced, his talk at ETH Denver at the Decentralized AI Day, as well as his architecture document, are all on Discord. And so if you dive in there and you go to the compute section, you can see all the diagrams and everything, but it seems like it's coming together really well. Ryan, I don't know if you want to add any other color to that, but that's really the key to getting into phase two, is to have the decentralized router and then be able to start handing out the rewards for everybody providing that compute.
Yeah, it's been a fun exercise in decentralized system design. We have the original white paper, and then Eric gave us the Yellowstone paper, and even the Lake Travis paper, and laying out all these different systems. But I think it's one thing to read about the systems and how it's going to work, and then sitting down and thinking through every single aspect of the data schema and how it's going to scale. And well, if we store this variable like this versus like that, is it going to blow up over time, or is it going to stay within constraints of the gas on chain? So it takes a lot of time to really just comb through each of these pieces of the system and make sure they're designed, one, to scale, and two, to stay decentralized. So we put a huge amount of time into making sure that the Morpheus architecture can do both. The paper that we released just a couple days ago is about 23 pages, laying out kind of the design tenets and like the core concepts that we want to emphasize in designing the ecosystem. And then it goes step by step through all the smart contracts that make up the ecosystem, all of the existing ones that are already deployed, and then all the different elements of the actual peer-to-peer software node itself, which is pretty complex, but it's really exciting to see all the code coming together very quickly. And as David had said earlier, the wallet, the proxy router, a lot of the node software itself had already been developed for the Lumerin hash power project. So being able to refactor the code very quickly to use for AI.
Sorry, cut
That's
off.
great.
I wanted to ask, Ryan. So is Lumen going through in some way not a rebranding, but a bit of repositioning? Predominantly, it was a hash power miner for Bitcoin and other proof of work concepts. So now is it positioning itself to be like a decentralized compute provider as a whole, similar to a cache?
No, so Lumerin itself is actually a data routing pattern.
Okay.
So that the actual, like, the way the protocol works is you have a source node and a destination node, and they broker how the sockets open and closed are closed through a smart contract. So that actual pattern is what is at the core of the Lumerin project. The hash power marketplace was just initial proof of concept showing what we could do with this data routing pattern. And we knew that we wanted to do something with AI, especially we started seeing a lot of these AI compute marketplaces come online. And a lot of miners were naturally transitioning from Bitcoin mining and other proof of work mining to providing AI compute power. So it was always on our radar. And then when I talked to David and I saw what the Morpheus community was doing, I just realized that this was just such a perfect fit for what we had already been building.
Yeah, and it's probably worth saying, from the Morpheus perspective, it's compute agnostic, right? If somebody wants to use Akash, to provide compute, go for it, right? Put your node on there, and you can, be pointing those endpoints and running Morpheus, right? And so there's so many good networks out there. You can think Morpheus almost as sort of aggregating across any compute provider that wants to come and offer inference to the network, right? And compute's just a key part of it, but you have to have the capital, you have to have the code, you have to have the smart agents, right? So Morpheus is not trying to compete with any of those networks. In fact, if you like Akash or you like BitTensor, you should want Morpheus to massively succeed because it's the Morpheus smart agents that are consuming that compute. It's the Morpheus smart agents that are consuming those models and using that inference and those models that the other networks are producing. So Morpheus is effectively in a whole nother layer in the decentralized AI tech stack.
Yeah, very, very.
And that's such a great distinction too with the AI smart agents that Morpheus is creating. I don't think people quite can fathom what these things can do. Is once you have a peer-to-peer ecosystem that both bridges, multiple blockchains and multiple language models with multiple disciplines, and you build a Morpheus agent that can seamlessly transition between all of these, it can be very, very powerful. I feel like we're building a couple internal toys to play with, but the evolution of these smart agents 5 years down the road, I think we're just going to be blown away.
Yep. Well, and that's the comparison to draw, right? Ethereum didn't write the smart contracts, right? Uniswap wrote contracts, Aave wrote contracts, Compound wrote contracts, right? But Ethereum provided the consensus and the ecosystem and the execution layer, right? And that's what Morpheus is doing, is providing a platform for anyone that wants to build these smart agents, right? If you want to build a DeFi agent that does swaps, go for it, right? You want to build, agent that runs, cool diffusion models or cool, language models, go for it, right? Invent and deploy anything you want, and Morpheus gives you a way to fund it, a way to monetize it, a way to get all the coding tools you need, right? And to get all the compute you need. Because that's what most developers, they don't want to build the infrastructure, right? They don't want to manage all of these servers. They don't want to handle all of these pieces or handle payments or customers. They just want to write their program and deploy it, right? That's why the App Store is so popular, right? That's why the Google Play Store is so popular, is it handles monetization and handles distribution. So that's what Morpheus is doing in this new smart agent context, is getting developers an easy way to deploy their code without having to handle all of the infrastructure, the payments, the distribution, or anything else. Cool. Did we have any other questions? Otherwise, I know we're here at the top of the hour and the beginning of the next. We can wrap it up.
Nothing more from my end. I think I've asked everything that was given to me before the AMA. But if there's nothing else, we'll be conducting more of these spaces as I said at the start of the talk, that we'll be hosting more over the month and probably even after that. This is the first of, and we just had was a bit last minute in terms of who we could have and come to the meeting and be able to present. So hoping that during the other sessions we'll have other people, other projects, other protocols that are decentralized or in some way contributing to Morpheus. And thank you so much for being here. Like Ryan, really think it helps the community having people that are helping contribute to Morpheus being on here, and it's very valuable. So that will be coming up. I think some people that I'd seen in the chat just listening for now have been like 6079, which will be doing proof of inference. We have some other people that will be contributing smart agents and smart agent building platforms like Matrix One. So yeah, there's going to be a lot. So I would definitely be coming into these AMAs and just really take in what is being said by the contributors and the protocols that are involved with Morpheus, because it's going to be big.
Cool. Well, thanks, Oracle. Appreciate you hosting the space. Good to see you, Taco. Thanks for jumping in, Ryan.
Yeah.
See you there, Jeff, Sean, everybody.
Yeah.
Catch you guys later.
Thank you, everyone, for being here, and we'll
thanks, guys.
have another one soon.
Yep.
All right. Bye, guys.
Awesome.
Bye.
Take care.
Thanks.